Valar Morghulis.
Valar Duhai.
Welcome to Southside Westeros, where we explore the world of Game of Thrones. From the Fist of the First Man to the catacombs of the Red Keep, no secrets will be safe from us. Enter and forever be changed.
There is only one God, and his name is death. And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Hello and welcome back to Southside Westeros. I'm Paul, your master of whispers, and I thank you for joining me on yet another journey through the world of Westeros. Today, we tackle the most requested podcast since the inception of our podcast. That's right. We're going to talk about the ill-made, spiteful little creature full of envy, lust, and low cunning. Yes, the one whose was given the right by men's laws to bear the name and display the colors of the proud sigil of the lion, and who forced his very own father to watch him waddle about wearing his very own father's sigil, and viewed as a bastardized plague and blight meant to embarrass the Lannister name. Yes, I'm talking about Tyrion Lannister, the most tragic and triumphant character in Game of Thrones. Now, he's also a contradiction, because no other character, I feel, is completely different from how he is conveyed in the books than Tyrion Lannister. I mean, in the book, the way you read it, you swear this guy does have horns and a tail and gnashing, gnarling teeth. But thanks to Peter Dinklage and an immense talent, this character was a very sympathetic centerpiece, cornerstone, if you will, for this show. And throughout the entire 8 seasons and 67 episodes, he was force-fed down your throat, and you were given a forced empathy, even. Or should we say sympathy? I don't know. Now, I hear the collective sucking of the teeth and hey, what's this guy talking about? Well, if you've been with me for a while, you know I go out on a limb. But understand that I'm going to back it up with fact. I'm going to back it up with scripture from the book of George. Yes, Tyrion. Now, there's no way in the world we can go through 8 seasons and 67 episodes in one podcast. Not at all. It's just not going to happen. Because we're going to explore many mishaps on the way. Now, I'm not going to set the stage for who Tyrion is, because you all know who Tyrion is. I'm not going to go into too much of his backstory, because you should know him. And if you don't, I suggest that you watch the show if you haven't, but if you're here, you have, right? But we're going to go through this much as we go through Daenerys Targaryen. We're going to go through season by season and look at all of the major events that have happened in this character's life. And as you know, I always have a scheme or two to change your opinion on how you may look at this character. And my goal is not to just turn this thing on its ear. Absolutely not. It's just to make you think and make you appreciate it. Because what I want to show you is that you don't realize how deep this show went. The show, not the book, not the source material, the show. And while I am not a fan of a lot of the writing that they did, I think there is a depth that is unappreciated, and we're going to find that in Tyrion. Now, the depth doesn't always work in the show's favor. It doesn't always work in the character's favor, but what it does do is it lets you know that you bore witness to something grand. And we're going to go into that right now. So we're going to start with season 1. And we find Tyrion accompanying Robert Baratheon to Winterfell. Now, I like how they made him a center point. Everyone heard about this. And let's set the stage. Medieval BC times. Not a lot going on other than like death and starvation and a little bit of disease. So news traveled quickly, even though it traveled by word of mouth, by carrier pigeon, carrier crow, however it did. It traveled. So news of a imp and a well-off imp would be on the lips of most people. So they were prepared for him coming. Now we meet him in the acquaintance of Roz. Roz is one of the most prominent prostitutes in the entire series. And you'll see her from time to time, and her end is unceremonious, but it will be covered in several podcasts. So even though Roz may not get her own, you will hear her name come up from time to time. Now, this moment here, he gives her a Lannister lion necklace. Now, understand this. This is to set the stage of who Tyrion is and how he views the wealth that he has. Just gives it away. He gives it away. This necklace probably could have bought him 100 nights with a woman probably 10 times better than Roz. But he gives it to her. Now, why does he give it to her? Does he give it to her out of contempt for his name and the wealth that it carries? I don't think Tyrion was actually contemptuous about that. I just think he was a spoiled little capricious man. And so being spoiled, he didn't appreciate the wealth that was around him, although he understood that that very wealth was what kept him walking and breathing in the world. But what it shows you is that Tyrion, even though he gives you this impression that being a dwarf doesn't bother me. I'm unbothered by my stature. I'm unbothered by the diminutive size that I have. And I walk this world like I'm 10 feet tall. No. It actually shows that Tyrion has an incessant need to be liked. Now, some of you who are fans of the show, you know this already. I get it. But just follow me through my thought process, because again, like I like to refer, they're spider webs. It's a beautiful spider web that each event leads to another event. And if we break these characters down to their psychological bare bones, you have an appreciation for how these things unfolded, and maybe, just maybe, some of the events that you were mad at, you might look at them differently. But this shows that Tyrion wants friends. He wants to be liked. So he's going to do these things to not only be liked, but to be remembered in another way other than being a midget or little person. Just using it as it's referred to in the show. So we fast forward to Tyrion finishing up with Roz and several other prostitutes that his brother Jaime provided, and we find him outside Winterfell lingering. Now, why would Tyrion be lingering? Maybe out of boredom. He is a smart man, so he does need stimulation. But I think he understands that everything inside of that hall would be fake. It's almost like everything before but is BS. So all of these interactions with so-called well-off noblemen, they're going to be fugazi and very transparent, because the only respect you're giving me is because of my name and my father. And while some folks revel in it, for a man like Tyrion, who for all purposes is a minstrel show, he's entertainment. So even though you're respecting me, you're snickering and laughing at me. And I'm really here just to give you something to talk about. So he tends to avoid these grand events. And you'll see this throughout the show, even his wedding. He wants to avoid these things, and he wants to do things on his own terms. Tyrion, even though he makes a lot of mishaps, his intentions, I believe, are noble in the fact that he wants to live life like I want to live it. And I do believe he enjoyed a lot of the things he did. In a way, he's almost like a sleazy lawyer in modern times, because he hangs out with the pimps, the pushers, the drug dealers, the prostitutes, the sellswords, the lower dregs of the world. Now, why do you think that is? so they can revere him. If you could tell a lot from a man by the company he keeps. And you can tell a lot of how he sees himself by the level of that company. So if a man is an alpha male and he hangs around other alpha males, he hangs around other very successful people consistently, then he gives into the thought process of iron sharpening iron. I have to stay on my game, but I also believe so much in myself that every day I can be tested. Think about that. Just think about that. Think about some of the most famous and successful people you know or that you read about, and look at those who they hang out with. Iron sharpens iron. So then you may look at someone who probably hangs out with people that you may view as maybe less than them. Not to be judgmental, just let's be honest, just to have the conversation. So they might view around people less intelligent than them or less successful. And the reason why, if these people haven't been in their lives for a long time, is to revere themselves. Is to always feel like you're the smartest one in the room. To always have someone looking up to you and someone validating your ego and feeding it because it can't feed itself. This is who Tyrion is. And this sets the stage for everywhere he goes and everyone he associates with. Ask yourself this, and don't say it out loud. Just listen, because we're talking, but ask yourself of the people. Just do a mental note real quick and take a quick inventory and a tally of all the people who Tyrion was closest with, who he was the most vulnerable with, and who he built the best relationships with. Now, out of all of them, there's one I would say didn't fit into that category. Now, wow. I just dropped your jaw. Don't worry. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into the guy. You know who he is. I'll give you that. It's not a she. Ooh. Ooh, he really hate. No. Stop. Rewind. And that person he meets next, which was Jon Snow. He runs into Jon Snow, Ned Stark's bastard, and he connects with him immediately. But it's not for the reasons I just laid out. No. Tyrion is a very astute figure, meaning he has to be able to size people up very quickly because he is a target of ridicule. He knows Jon Snow is not that guy. He sees what everyone saw in Jon Snow. The character, the man, the myth, the being of Jon Snow. The idea of what Ned Stark sold to people. That is what Jon Snow is. And Tyrion saw him. And while Tyrion can't compare himself to Jon Snow, they are kindred spirits in a way. Because in his eyes, and by his own admission, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. Now, despite the time he spent with these pushers, pimps, and drug dealers, Tyrion is very well read, and he is cunning for the people he hangs around with. And I'll mention something Sansa says to him later on down the line, after he's just a broken man. The last 2 seasons, Tyrion just had that sad look all over his face, but the fondness for social misfits was a symptom, and Sansa picked up on it. She said at one time, I thought you were the most clever man in the world, because that's what he sold himself as. But I realize you're not. It's the facade of intelligence. It's the facade of extreme cunning. Anybody can be conniving. Anyone can. Anyone can be a carnivorous person. A backbiting, conniving, lying piece of crap, right? Anybody can do that and play people. But Tyrion's advertising was, I have cunning that is on the level of kings and queens and lords. And that if you protect me and if you allow me to use you to further my own goals and needs, that cunning will pay you off. And he was very good at selling that. But some people saw through it. Now, here's where Tyrion makes a mistake that will live with him for the rest of the show. And this is when Prince Joffrey refuses to go pay respects after Bran's thrown out of the window by Jaime. Tyrion slaps him. And he slaps him until he gives in. Now, here's where Tyrion made a mistake. And if he was as cunning as he claimed he was, he would have understood this. Tyrion slaps him in front of the Hound. What did Joffrey refer to the Hound as? Dog. You know what a dog is in medieval time? There's nothing lower. Excrement is not as low as a dog. So when you refer to those in your employ as a dog, you want to have them in a certain position. You want to keep them underfoot, so to speak. And Tyrion took that away. At this point, there's no one closer to Joffrey than the Hound. The Hound is his shadow. And you smack him in front of him and others. And you let him know that you have a disdain for him. You see, you don't look at it that way. You just look at Joffrey as just this mean kid who had so much power he didn't know what to do with, and he was just mean. What did Joffrey do to Tyrion up until this point? Now, we can assume Joffrey was bad, and he is a bad apple. But we're just talking about the show of what you know about Joffrey. What had he done to Tyrion at this time? Nothing. So all of the aggression came from Tyrion. So now let me put it in another perspective. Most people hate Joffrey because he took his power and they felt he misused it. Tyrion had power over Joffrey at this point. And even though he was trying to get him to do something lord-like, you didn't do it in the way that you were supposed to respect the future king. And a man of your stature should have known that. And if you were as cunning as you claim, someone of Joffrey's limited intelligence, you should have been able to easily influence him into doing the right thing. Yet, you had to strike him. You had to make a very powerful enemy, and you didn't have the power to stand up to him. Now, the show grazes over that, so you're not going to see that. But I catch that. And then look how smooth the writers were in this instance. And then you send him to the breakfast table with his family. He asks for fishes. And you see that he has this wonderful little relationship with Tommen and Marcella. You know that Jaime loves him. That's very, very obvious. And then the contempt with Cersei. So now we replay the issue with Joffrey now. Were you smacking Joffrey or were you smacking Cersei? Because, and as we will find out later, Cersei hates him. And quite honestly, he doesn't like her either. So it's at this breakfast, though, he tells them he plans to visit the wall, so he's going to break off from the family. They want to leave the North as quickly as possible because they just attempted to kill the Warden of the North's son. But they don't want to be there. They're Southerners. They have a world of leisure and pleasure, and that's not possible in the frozen North because winter's coming. Now, this is where, again, Tyrion makes a mistake. Tyrion knows his family, and he takes an interest in Bran's fall, and the writers and Peter kind of make him have a look like he knows there's more to this. He knows what happened, even though he doesn't know what happened. Now, this made no sense to me, and I'll tell you why. I think it was a false sense that was put into the viewer to kind of view Tyrion as this larger-than-life character who is of a Sherlock Holmes quality. But there's no information at this point to make Tyrion think his brother and sister would have done this. You see, this is where some of the writing messed up and they went left. First episode, right? Yes, you know your brother and sister are bumping uglies. Clearly, they're your brother and sister. You know what they're doing, right? You know this. You may know that your sister is a vicious killer, but your brother, for all you know, is a very honorable and loving man, right? So him figuring that out there, no, it's ridiculous. And it should have been just thrown out because really it led to nowhere. But it kind of opens up this dialogue between him and Cersei, where they give you kind of glum reactions that Bran is, they give him he looks at them when he tells them Bran is still alive, and they kind of give this look. But again, I felt that whole scene could have been pushed out because it was just to lift Tyrion up in your assertion, the viewer's assertion. So now we fast forward to Tyrion on the road to Castle Black. Now, this is not a pleasurable trip for him. So this is where I do give the character credit. He understood that it was going to be rough, probably not as rough as it was, but he knew the accommodations would be less than ideal for a man of his stature. But he uses this time to, again, jump into this thing with Jon. I feel it's forced, but it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that a character like Tyrion, who has all of the backing in the world and none of the physical respect, can look at a character like Jon who has nothing. He's a bastard. Even though he's the bastard of the Lord of Winterfell, he has nothing because he's going to take the black. There's nothing for a guy who's taking the black, and he's doing it purposefully. So a man from his background to take the black means he's searching for legitimacy. And the only way he can get it is through his physical attributes and the commitment he makes to go out and find his honor, because he wasn't born with it, but Tyrion was born with it, and he has to buy it. And I think he really wants Jon to look up to him. I think to have a friend like Jon, to have a man of Jon's stature on his side would validate him. So he keeps telling Jon about why he reads and keeping his wits sharp and wanting to compete. And he really wants this guy to respect him in the short time they have together. Now, upon reaching the wall, he's speechless, like anybody would be, because this wall is hundreds of feet tall. It's a modern miracle for that time. I don't even know how men built it. It's how we look at the pyramids of Egypt. Yes, we have science and technology that we can try to explain it, but we have no idea how they did it back then. We can barely do it now. We can barely make a microwave to work 2 years. So anybody would be taken aback, but he is speechless when he sees this. Now, while he's there, he's interacting and he's observing, but he's still following Jon. And what he sees is Jon has this kind of superior attitude because Sir Roderick trained him. He was trained by Master of Arms, and his father, even though it's grungy and dirty in the north, had a lot of money. He was a rich man. So even though he was a bastard, he's still a lord's son, bastard. So he got taught all the ways of war as any child of a lord would. But this isn't helping him here, because now this is where Jon doesn't understand his place. I think the story of Game of Thrones, besides the common theme of happiness is fleeting, I think a lot of characters don't know their place, don't understand their place, and because of that, they make poor choices. So with this poor attitude, not only is he off-putting to his fellow recruits, who are the dregs of society, but he's also pissing off the guys who are already there. Now, I don't think a Stark's name holds a lot of weight, and I'll tell you why. Sir Alistair, Uncle Benjen, was supposed to be one of the best rangers out there, right? So you would think a good ranger, if he's your brother, a brother of the Night's Watch, you would think that you would treat his family a little better. But no, he doesn't. He does not. He treats him worse. So I don't think Stark's names mean much. I don't think it was about him being a bastard because, I mean, look who you have there. Everyone's a bastard, right? You got rapists, killers, thieves. Come on. So you think they're going to single out someone, oh, you're a bastard. Why would they? No, come on. It's something to do with the Starks at that point. And I would love to look further into that, and I think I will, and I'll explore whether we can do another podcast on that. But it's pretty interesting. But it kind of culminates when these guys try to jump Jon Snow, and Tyrion, where he does his first act of Jesusry, is where he kind of comes in and he saves Jon Snow. I mean, honestly, they could have killed him. Jon's good, but he's not that good. They could have just stabbed him and it was done with it. And and the disdain that he had already built for the brothers who were there would have made them just chuck his body, and that was the end of Jon Snow. But Tyrion saved him, right? And Lord Jeor Mormont and even Maester Aemon, they all liked him. And being Tyrion, not Jon. We're done with Jon. I just had to use him. They understood. There was a understanding between the three of them. They were all outcasts of great houses. So there was that bond between them, and I think that's why they asked him to go beg the court to recruit more men for the Night's Watch. And the reason why is, of course, as we would know, is because winter was coming, and so was the Night King, although at this point in time, Tyrion had no belief in this whatsoever. He's an intelligent man. And on a side note, I think that's another reason why I'm upset at the writers. Game of Thrones is a very mythical and mystical tale, filled with magic and creatures and beings, and I felt they tried to push out the magic as much as they could. They tried to explain away these things, and they didn't focus on that magic as they should have, and I think that would have made the show better. And I hope wholeheartedly that the House of the Dragon does not get into that as well. I hope they open up and embrace the magical side of Westeros. Just a side note. Now, I know we're spending a lot of time on a small portion, but this is very important because it sets up who Tyrion is and what makes him make the decisions he makes. He's an underachiever. And because he's an underachiever and because of who he chooses to spend time with, no one pushes him. As a matter of fact, when he's around others with equal or greater intelligence, Tyrion tends to back down or resort to despicable acts. There's not a lot of examples of Tyrion outthinking his opponents. He may outmaneuver them through trickery, but very few of outthinking. Just his time as the hand. But you kind of like got the whole kingdom at your disposal. Jesus. You have the whole kingdom at your disposal. So of course you should win. If you didn't, you didn't belong there anyway. Hint, hint. Ned Stark podcast. Check it out. So on his way back, he pauses at Winterfell, like anybody would do. If you understand how these long road trips go, you're walking or riding, and it's dirty. There's no bathrooms. There's no washing. So you want to stop along the way to, wash up, get some food, kind of recharge your batteries for the next leg of the trip. But when he gets there, he finds that Bran has awoken. And again, Tyrion loves bastards and broken things. And did he try to curry favor with the Starks? No, he didn't need to. He's a Lannister. I run the frickin' world, right? I think he just saw a broken thing with Bran. He wanted to help him. He wanted to use the knowledge that he had, right? But Robb gives him a very icy and quite rude reception because it's understood or it's assumed that he had something to do with this. And this is where Robb didn't have good information, but that was because of his mother. Because if you had sat back and thought about this and used your counsel, then you would have seen that there was no reason why Tyrion would even want to do anything to Bran. Why is this? Why would he? What makes Tyrion? And is this some grand Lannister scheme? And if that's the case, would the Lannisters entrust Tyrion, the dwarf, the imp, the laughingstock of the family to do something like this? Really? And why would we go after Bran? You see, this is where the writing was lazy. And a thinking man would have said this. Well, why is this? But that's okay. It's fine. So we go to the inn at the crossroads, and he's taken into custody by Catelyn Stark and others who are around her. Now, because she knows she's out of time here. She knows she's out of pocket. So she takes him where she thinks she can get protection, which is the Eyrie. Now, the entire time he's protesting, I'm innocent. They're not listening to him at all. And this is where Bronn, who we did a podcast on, actually, thank you. That was one of our most listened to podcasts, and we've gotten great feedback on that. And so much so that we may revisit it and give you more. But this is where we see Bronn, and Tyrion's letting it be known that I'm rich and I would pay for whoever helps me. During this time, they're attacked by the Hill tribes, where Tyrion defends himself, kills a few, and you see, and another reason where you saw that Catelyn just was terrible, because could have been a bonding moment for you. You saw this man, and if he was as wretched as you're making him out to be, he wouldn't have fought like he did and saved you. But you keep going. Again, big plot holes, lazy writing. At least address it. At least have a small scene where I don't care what you did, you're still a bastard, my son, something. Give me something. Now, there may be some editing that was done. I don't know. I'm going to explore that too. So Tyrion warns Catelyn. We've been through all of this, and and he's in the cell, and he calls for his brother, and his brother doesn't come. We've gone through this. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just going to point out the major events. So this is where him and Bronn, their allegiance is created. And again, Tyrion was good at seeing opportunity, but really not good at getting the most out of it. But he had Bronn, and Bronn got him back to his father with a small side trip with Shaga and the Hill tribes. Again, I think that was a wasted opportunity. You see these Hill tribes, they're kind of there, they're not, and then eventually they're paid off and they leave. Kind of waste. I wanted to see a little more, especially when you're threatening to feed people's manhoods to goats. I want to see that, right? But again, Tyrion, you have a problem gaining allegiance from smart people. Now, Shaga's not educated whatsoever, but he understands people. He understands that Tyrion is nothing to be feared. There's nothing special about him other than who his father is and what he has access to. So this is a common theme throughout the entire Game of Thrones. This is a common theme, and we're going to watch this. Underachiever, unable to garner the respect of those who you call his peers. And your father, Tywin, saw that. He saw that. Now, and Tyrion is a liability, not because he's little. Yes, that's obvious, but that they have money. Money and cunning can overcome the sheep. But it is because you're an underachiever. Low cunning. That is a very accurate assessment of who Tyrion Lannister is. And you see this time and time and time again. Now, what he does have is a horseshoe implanted in his rear end, because he's a lucky son of a gun. His father sends him to war to get rid of him. He gets knocked out right when the war starts by the very same tribesmen who he promised weapons to. And that's the only way he survived, because if he had fought, you saw what happened in the Battle of Blackwater. Well, maybe you haven't, but you'll see it eventually. So after his father commands him, and this is where he meets Shay. Again, the common theme of Tyrion. is not only his association with prostitutes and killers and such, but there's a problem with the ability they have to influence them. And this is where I think the show kind of showed you this. And I don't know if you picked up on it or not, or even if you cared, but he tells a story of when he married a prostitute and how Jamie set it up and all that. And he tells you this story, and he looks like a broken man. You want to feel sorry for him. And, oh, woe is me, woe is me. And this is why I love what Shay does. Shay is a prostitute, right? She's a working girl. She has no time for fantasy. She has no time for stories. She deals in realism, the reality. And from her eyes here, she's looking at Tyrion. Hey, you're hanging out with me. You're hanging out with Bronn. You like to be with us. You can go be in the tent with the rich people looking at strategy, but you're over here drinking with us. But you're not smart enough to be. Look at it. You're not smart enough to hang with the people you're hanging with. Because while you may have book intelligence higher than them, and they may revere you for that, you don't have the street smarts. Why? Because you believed a woman who was just about to get raped an hour later would want to sleep with you and then marry you. You see, you're not smart enough for Westeros, and you're not slick enough for us. The only thing that keeps you alive with us is your money, player. Get it. I get it. Look, I'm with you guys. They wanted you to believe he was this great character. They wanted you to feel sorry and sympathy, but at the same time, they were giving you this information. Tyrion, you're not smart enough to be with us. Bronn, look at the way Bronn looks at him. We talked about it in this podcast. Bronn looks at him like a lunch. I'm keeping you alive because it's going to pay off one day, and that's the only reason. So she tells him that, and they tell you that at that point. So I'm not jumping on Tyrion. I just want you to see that he was ill-equipped to run in the circles he was running in. Now, the tribes knock him out. I don't want to get into that because it's really quite stupid. The whole purpose of that was really to set up that Robb was a great adversary. So I thought that was a wasted interaction. We could have squeezed a little more out of Tyrion and the disdain his father had for him. And I think that would have it would have paid off later on and would have made the whole trial and everything even that much better. Now, it shows that Tywin was impressed for a second that Tyrion survived. Just impressed for a second. But also he realized how he survived, which again is an embarrassment. I'm a Lannister. All we have is how people look at us. So he's very disappointed again. But he understands that now I have a situation. I can't leave the battlefields yet because if I do, then this boy will take over and these bannermen who I can only keep in line will run off. So I'm going to go to Harrenhal, regroup, and start putting my plans in place. Now, because the turn of the situation is so ominous, and given the fact that Ned has been killed by Joffrey, and we talked about that, that was actually a great move just for all the wrong reasons. We know that he has to have a presence back in King's Landing because it's jumping off over there, and you can't trust Cersei to control Joffrey because he's doing whatever he wants. So now he sends Tyrion back to King's Landing to be the hand of the king. Now, Tyrion, for a guy like Tyrion, what? So if he was smart, he would have understood at that point because you're being sent to keep Joffrey in line. What did you do to Joffrey? You embarrassed him. You brought war upon him. You let him know that you did not like him. You see, it's easy to be mad at Joffrey, but look at it from the other side. What did Tyrion do good for Joffrey? Really? He embarrassed him. He smacked him. He disrespected him. at every turn. Is this an intelligent man? Is this a man with street smarts? No, he's a spoiled rich kid who, every time he makes a mistake, his daddy's money buys him out of it. Yep. He reads a lot, but clearly disseminating information is not his strong suit. And in the words of Sansa Stark, in the words of her, you're not as clever as you think you are. And that can get you in trouble. And here's why. Tyrion, you're not slick. You know why? Because your father says don't bring that whore with you. That man is in charge of an army, and he's running multiple fronts, and he still had enough intelligence and understanding to find out what you were doing and to find out you're still betting whores. And why does he not want you to be with a whore? Why? Because you shouldn't fulfill your manly needs? No, because you're easily influenced, because you have low cunning and no street smarts. And I can't have you influenced by whores because these people don't understand what needs to be done to run a kingdom. You are a lion who is concerning yourself with the thoughts of the sheep. Now you're there thinking, oh gosh, you must hate Tyrion. No, I don't. But I actually like him a lot, and that's why I was able to observe all his shortcomings. And these may have been what were presented to us to see, but I don't believe you saw everything. And because you didn't see everything, it made you look at other events and characters maybe skewed. Now, season 1 was packed. This was a packed season 1. And season 2 is going to be our part 2 because I really got to get into him as the hand of the king. That's when we start seeing a lot of his mistakes, but then we start seeing strengths kind of pop out. And Tyrion surprised me on several fronts. Very good moves. And he made a lot of moves. It was just his past indiscretions caught up with him. And we're going to see that in season 2 and season 3. That'll be the next podcast. Now, of course, we're very close to the House of the Dragon coming out. Now, again, when House of Dragon comes out, we're going to be doing a live reaction Zoom on our Southside Westeros YouTube page. But we're going to be doing a weekly podcast on the episodes. We're still going to be doing these episodes. And for you patrons, who I appreciate, and you folks that bought me coffee, that sent donations through the Cash App, and our patrons, you're still getting your weekly episodes as well. And this one is going to be a doozy this week. Don't miss it. As always, I thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Southside Westeros. We look forward to you coming back and visiting us again. If you want to email us, you can reach us at southsidewesteros@gmail.com. You can also reach us at Southside Westeros at both Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch. We're SS Westeros at Cup of Coffee and Twitter. If you want to donate to the program to keep getting this great content, please donate to our Patreon or our Cash App. Both are Southside Westeros. Valodoharas. And may the Mother bring 7 blessings to you all.